Hello, I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and you're welcome to the Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. On this week's episode, Grass10 Champion Colin Doherty gives insight into his efforts to build a repeatable grass-based system, while moving towards halving his chemical nitrogen inputs. And Colin started by explaining the changes to the farm system, moving to spring milk production in the mid-2000s.
My dad was always in dairy, all right, but he was very restricted with quotas over the years. So he was actually a liquid milker up to about 2005. Into early 2006, he switched over, and then I was really coming into my own, I suppose, at that stage, and into it was 2009 I left college. So we were milking around 70 cows that time, and he actually had a small suckler herd as well that time as well. So I suppose when I came home from college, I was working maybe off farm a little bit, and also here, especially in the busy times. And then I suppose that 2015 was coming and quotas were going. We had a good bit of extra land around here, so we were always kind of looking at expanding a little bit. And as I said, that quota was restricted to my dad all the way along. So from 2015 to today, then we've kind of grown the herd a little bit every year, and we're milking about just over 220 cows now this year in 2022.
And, if we look at it, I suppose you're recognised for your excellence in grassland, Colin. To you, looking at the ideal, what does that look like for you in terms of your farming system, and I suppose specifically in relation to grassland?
Yeah, I suppose the main thing for us is that, and me, what I've learned since I came home, it was really that we needed a plan, number one, but that plan for us has always revolved around grass. My dad was always the kind of man who liked to get cows out early. Now, it was a very dry farm, so that was always possible too, but maybe the plan wasn't just as solid back in those days as it is now, but we always like to focus on getting cows out to grass. And our whole farm system really is built around what grass we can grow and utilise now. Everything else kind of falls into place from there.
And on that, I suppose, what are the stats? If you look at a rolling average of the last couple of years, what level of grass productivity are you achieving?
Yeah, so I suppose before 2018 and the drought, we would have been maybe heading for the 17 tonne of grass grown here. But 18 was obviously a tougher year. We lost about 3 tonne that year. We were down to about 12 maybe, and then 19 was a better year. But look, we're probably averaging around the 14.5 or 15 tonne over the last 5 or 6 years.
Do you see scope, Colin, there in terms of driving that further? I suppose we are in a situation now where we're reducing the amount of nitrogen that we're spreading. That is impacting on overall productivity on some farms. So that 14.5 tonne, is there more in it? Or, are you content with that sort of number?
Yeah, well, I suppose my target would be an average of 15 tonne. A few years ago, it would have been probably more, but obviously with the way things have changed a little bit in the last couple of years, we're not going to be able to grow that 17 or 18 tonne. We do have a very long growing season here, and we get cows out a lot, so it probably would have been possible back with the higher levels of nitrogen and stuff. But now the target is the 15 tonne at 150 kilos of nitrogen, chemical nitrogen per hectare, and I think that should be fairly achievable for us in the next few years.
And looking at that 14.5 tonne, talk through ideal stocking rate, be it milking platform and whole farm.
Yeah, so, well, look, I work really off of whole farm here all the time. Now, we were all in kind of one block here up to last year. We took on a couple of blocks. They're just within a mile of the home farm here. But so we work in whole farm because the way I've always looked at it is that whatever grass we grow dictates our stocking rate, and that's on the whole farm basis. The cows can graze here most of the year, but then we're bringing in the winter feed from the blocks up the road. So really we're looking at that 14.5 or even 15 tonne dictating our stocking rate, which should allow us to be kind of at 2.4 cows to the hectare overall. We haven't just got there yet, but we're hoping to get to it next year.
And that idea, you mentioned getting out to grass early in the spring. There's, I suppose, no issues primarily with spring grazing. But if we look at the feed supply and the grazing season in its entirety, I suppose, how are you balancing things at the shoulders of the year where growth isn't as high as mid-season?
Yeah, so up to now, I suppose we haven't had a major issue there because our stocking rate has been pretty manageable. This spring we get out kind of the last days of January every year, and we more or less, graze right through. Cows ate maybe, I think, about 30 or 40 kilos of silage in the springtime, just in a couple of really bad nights and stuff. And we a couple of 100 kilos of meal. I don't think we even fed 200 kilos of meal, and the rest of the diet was grass to the milking cows. So the shoulders hasn't been an issue, but I suppose in the plan next year is to stock this place a little bit heavier, and we have a good bit of red clover growing in the farm up the road. So the plan would be to either zero graze or bring silage from them to fill those gaps in the shoulders of the year.
You've mentioned I suppose, moving from winter milk to spring. How was the transition in relation to cow productivity and fertility performance on the farm?
Yeah, look, we had huge issues, to be honest. It probably goes back to a little bit where, and my dad won't mind me saying that, there was no real clear direction of how the farm was going back in those days, and maybe the breeding policy. And then with the all year round production meant the cows fertility had just slipped, and maybe a little bit unknowns to us. When we went into the spring block calving, fertility was a huge issue, trying to get them in calf at all, but also late calvers and stuff. And we worked, I suppose, we just really got heavily into the genomic system then as soon as that came in with EBIs, and made huge progress, in fairness, in a couple of years. Every bunch of heifers that we had coming in were just kind of lasting longer and going in calf easier. And but we had a lot of work to do, and it took time. Like, if we came out of winter milk in 2005, we probably were only getting into the kind of levels of fertility and in 2014 or 15. But I would still say it's something that we need to keep working on too.
And production then, like you've mentioned, heifers coming into the system, late calvers, fertility slipping. So that would suggest, that as well, you're either breeding for a long period of time, or you're culling cows who aren't fitting the system. So, how did that impact on productivity in terms of milk solids?
Yeah, it had a huge effect. Like, I was looking back at 2014's figures not that long ago, and we were maybe doing, I think, around 370 kilos of milk solids per cow or something. Like, we'd, kind of probably 15 or 20% of the cows hadn't calved by the 1st of May for a good few years there. And, productivity was really, I suppose it wasn't as bad as you'd think, but just in hindsight, we've made huge strides in that too. Like, but days in milk has been a big part of that. Like,
and where are milk solids at today?
Yeah, so we did 430 kilos of milk solids last year, and I'd say we'll be on probably around par this year, maybe with a little bit less meal fed. But the big progress with us has been our fat and protein. So we've come from around 339 in 2014 protein, and this year we'll be at around 380 protein. Obviously grassland management has to come into the bit as well, but the fat has been a harder change. Probably we were around maybe 410 protein in 2014, and we're probably heading for 460 or 450 or 60 this year. That's been a little bit harder to move, but we've made huge strides in that too.
And going forward then, I mean, have you a number in mind? People talk about their 500 kilo cow producing 500 kilos of milk solids, a kilo for a kilo. Is there a number that you have in your head for the system from a production perspective?
Yeah, look, I like the idea of the kilo to kilo, but my whole system is driven on grass. So, I'd be very slow to kind of be swayed by production or very cautious about, trying to improve our production, in any way, really. Like, the whole system is based on grass. But having said that, we weighed the cows again this year. We've weighed them for the last couple of years. They average 485. Now we're still probably 50% first and second calvers, so they're going to mature maybe a little bit heavier than that. But I'd love to get to the 1 kilo to 1, but I mean, anywhere where we are, a small improvement, I'd be very happy with, to be honest, and stick to our guns with the grass system.
And like you've mentioned the grass system, and it is fundamental to, I suppose, spring calving systems in Ireland. But if we take a step back and look at, I suppose, the bigger picture in Ireland, you've mentioned you're looking at growing that 15 tonnes from 150 kilos of nitrogen. It's a different story to something that we would have seen 5 years ago on farms. And it is, sustainability, across the board is something that we're really looking at. To you, what are the 2 or 3 key things within your system at home that is future-proofing ye from a sustainability perspective?
Yeah, well, I suppose the main one we're looking at is our nitrogen use efficiency and bringing that chemical nitrogen input down. Last year we spread around 190 kilos nitrogen a hectare. I mean, it's at about 130 as we stand today, but I'm probably saying we're going to finish at maybe 170 kilos nitrogen per hectare. But trying to get that down to the 150 while also sustaining our stocking rate by growing the grass is the main one. After that, then we're using all less slurry spreading. We're using protected urea since 2017. We haven't spread any straight can. And like we're doing all the other, we're working on our EBI and trying to produce that higher solids cow as well. So we're like, it's a lot of small things, I suppose, is what we're doing.
Is there anything, Colin, outside of your environmental practices that you would see as, I suppose, sustainability metrics?
Labour is a huge one here as well. As we've grown, it's something that we've been very aware of, and a lower labour cow has had to be a kind of a priority too. We're like, I suppose in our growth, you learn a little bit every year, and you learn that you just don't have the time to maybe do things that you used to do before. But it also needs to be, farm needs to be the kind of place that people want to come and work, I suppose, and where we want to work, where we can have a life outside of the farm, and that kind of sustainability is very important to us too.
Finally, Colin, I suppose you are renowned now at this point for achieving the feat of Grass10 Champion last year. I've seen in recent weeks the applications have opened for the current year. I'd love to get some insight from you in terms of what you learned from the competition, or has it been of benefit to your farm business?
To be honest, it was something that I always, I always looked up to the winners of it, and even keep telling people that the day of the awards, I was really surprised when I was looking around the room at the farmers that were there that I was the one who won the overall. But it was really enjoyable experience. Even the day that the judges were here, was a kind of it was very interesting to kind of open your farm to these people who would, a lot of them had a lot more expertise than me in certain areas, and it was more of an open discussion, and it was really there was a lot of benefit from that too. But I was really proud to win it, and I hope that, as you said, the applications are open, and I'd encourage people to definitely apply. There's no major pressure in it or anything, because even that day the judge and I felt, what work we've done is what we're being judged on. I couldn't change anything on the day, or I couldn't impress them any more than what we've been doing. So it's a nice competition that way, and it's been great. I suppose the other big thing, and look, it's something as well that I kind of am looking forward to, but would always have been wanted to do, really, was, we're having an open day here on the 6th of September, and it'll be, be great to open up the farm and be able to welcome people in to show them what we do, and hopefully people will be able to learn a little bit from what we're doing here as well. And obviously everyone is welcome that day.
That is super, Colin, and it's great to get insight to your farm. And As you say, massive changes over the years, changing the system completely from winter milk, while, albeit there was a strong focus on grassland regardless of that system, and the incremental growth in herd size resulting from additional land that has become available, sticking to your principles, of primarily growing grass, and that being the feed that drives the system and the productivity within the cows. Thank you, Colin.
Thanks very much.
That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Colin Doherty for joining me on this week's show. In order to understand the aspects of the Dairy Edge which are most appealing and beneficial to you, the listener, I would appreciate if you could take a few short minutes to complete the survey included in the show notes to give your feedback. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and join me next time for your Dairy Edge.